Hi,
Oh,
Megan.
hi, let me get this set up a little bit better.
Yeah, no
I
problem.
didn't realize how close it would be to me.
So, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us for our sixth episode of TEDx Day. And Megan, thank you so much for joining me. It's such a pleasure to have you. So,
Yeah,
if our viewers have any questions at the end, just leave your comments down below and we'll cover it later. So, let's just jump into it. Megan, do you think you could, give a brief introduction of like who you are, what you do, that type?
yeah, for sure. So hi everyone, my name's Megan. I'm, I guess now a rising senior slash current senior, living in Delaware. I run an organization called the Urban Garden Initiative, and I'm also the author of a children's book called Finding Tiger. Really passionate about environmental issues, entrepreneurship, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I also understand you are the founder of TGI, or the Urban Garden Initiative. So, do you think you could explain your organization to our viewers a bit?
Yeah. So the Urban Garden Initiative is a international 501c3 nonprofit organization that aims to inspire and empower youth to achieve urban sustainability through a gardening-based program. We do a variety of different types of work. So just to give you guys the very quick backstory of how we got started. We got started first here within Wilmington, Delaware, working to tackle the major food desert problem that's really prevalent within my own community, specifically bringing gardening and kind of providing these workshops that were completely funded by our organization to youth that traditionally really did not get any environmental education. And we really want to provide them with like the skill set to take on growing food sustainably at their own homes or at their own school. From there, once we developed a pretty strong base program here within Delaware, we then began expanding internationally, and we now have 40 plus chapters all around the world, here within the US as well as some other countries, and they're doing very similar work to what we do here, what we started here within Delaware, of starting gardens, teaching workshops, doing programs, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I was going through your website, and there's two phrases that kind of stuck out to me, and they were food deserts and urban sustainability. So, do you think you could kind of go through what those two mean for your organization?
For sure. So food deserts, like I said, that was one of the main reasons why we wanted to get started in the first place. And they're pretty much areas, and it's not necessarily just within urban areas. It can be in other locations as well, but it's just places where people don't really have access to healthy fruits and vegetables. There's no grocery stores in that location. A lot of times, community members that live there are only able to access food. At maybe a local fast food restaurant, or there's like small corner stores or things like that that they can buy some food from, but normally it's not going to be healthy fruits and vegetables, and it's going to be pretty expensive if they're trying to get healthy food.
Right.
Um, so that's why we wanted, and it's crazy, I think, for us to think that, given the country that we live in and everybody thinking that it's super developed, that there's still communities that don't really even have access to healthy fruits and vegetables. Um, so that's definitely, like I said, something that I was super passionate about and why we wanted to start Tugi in the first place. So that's that. And then you also had mentioned urban sustainability. Um, so that's kind of a multifaceted, I think, word. And there's many different components, but I think specifically what we kind of focus on is obviously urban, like environmental sustainability. Urban communities deal with their fair share of environmental issues, especially given, there's more transportation, there's many like factories and companies and all of that. So we want to teach students, what problems are going on in the community, especially if they live in an urban area. Um, of course, food desert also being one, um, as well as just other problems related to like pollution or recycling. So we want to teach students the skill set of kind of how to tackle those issues within their own community, via the workshops and other things that we kind of implement, to show them how to go about it.
Right. I can definitely see the problem that you're trying to tackle, and you're right, it is a really big issue. I'm in Pennsylvania currently, but I just moved here from LA, so I can kind of relate to, what you're talking about, the food deserts. I've definitely seen that. But I think for a lot of us, we see the problem and we don't really do anything to address it. So, how did you go from having an idea to moving towards this, sustainable solution that you're talking about in your organization?
Yeah. So I guess I'll start a little bit from the beginning. I would say, one of the main things that I found, especially even before starting the Urban Garden Initiative, is that your first project slash the first thing that you work on is not going to be, your probably the only thing that you're going to work on. So before starting Tugi, I actually worked on some other projects, and I don't know if you want me to talk about that now or later. Maybe I'll get into it a little bit later, but I worked on several projects where I was able to learn, about important skills such as prototyping, kind of ideation, and just working around different challenges that you'll face. Um, so first off, I would say, relating it back to Tugi, it is really important to develop a strong base program for whatever you're creating right within your own community. I think a lot of people often have these ideas of creating global solutions to these huge issues, whether it's hunger or poverty or all of that. And although that's incredible, and I think everybody has the capability to do that, things like that don't come overnight. You're not going to be able to tackle a huge problem like that right away. So it's important to kind of identify how you can take that large problem and first kind of see it within your own community and where it might be pervading, and tackle it in that way. Develop solutions maybe on a smaller scale initially, and then once you have that strong base program, then you can continue to expand that. So once you see some traction within people that are around you, you see if you're working with schools or students that they're really engaging with your program or what you've created, then you can start thinking about expanding and then thinking about the sustainability of your solution, possibly adapting what you originally created a little bit here and there to make sure that it's long term and it's not just a one-time workshop or a one-time program.
Right. And bouncing off of that, I know that today your organization is like a worldwide thing, but you probably started small. So do you think you could go into, your initial efforts with your organization back when you were first starting?
Yeah. Like I was saying right in the quick intro at the beginning, 2E initially started very small, just here within Delaware and specifically within Wilmington. Via some of the other past projects that I've kind of worked on, I was connected to a few schools. Specifically, actually had to do with Finding Tiger and me doing some workshops there, reading the book to students. So initially, when we first started, it was maybe us working with 4 or 5 schools within Delaware. Most of them were ones I already previously had worked with, and we just did these 1 hour workshops around container gardening and climate change and food sustainability. And we saw that the students really loved the gardening. It was amazing to see their faces kind of light up when we started, planting and playing with soil, and them just learning about how severe a lot of these issues are. Because, like I mentioned, in Delaware and specifically my community, this really was not being taught at schools, and a lot of students were not really familiar with the problems that were going on. So once we saw that, students really loved it, schools really loved it, then we began just first expanding here within Delaware, working with more schools, then working with some community centers, and the process of us expanding internationally actually came very organically. So it was more so a process of other youth reaching out to us, being like, wow, I really love your organization, love your mission. We are dealing with similar issues in my community. How can we implement it? And that's how we, started creating this chapter program and developing that out further.
Right. I know as much as your organization is solely about environmentally like improving things in our world, I think it's also really about youth entrepreneurship and getting involved in your communities. So do you think you could go more into, what youth entrepreneurship is and, your experiences with it?
Yeah. So I think youth entrepreneurship is something that we've definitely kind of seen a rise of within the last maybe 10 years or so, and especially here where I live, because I live right outside a major university. There's kind of a pretty large focus on entrepreneurship, especially for college students. And I think although we see this rise, there's also a fair share of challenges that are kind of faced when, you know, young people get into starting their own business or starting their own nonprofit, which is originally that a lot of people don't believe in what you're doing, don't think you're capable in creating this business or nonprofit. And I definitely dealt with my fair share of, you know, kind of people not believing in me when I first started and just thinking it was going to be some fun, cute little project that I was doing on the side. Um, but I think it's so important to kind of be empowering and inspiring this next generation to work on tackling many of these issues, even if it's not climate change. There's so many issues that we're dealing with in the world today. And I think, you know, youth being the next generation, like we need to be the people that kind of step up and work on solving these problems. And once we start equipping youth with the resources and the skills to kind of take on these, it's not really something that's being taught in school of, you know, how to start your own business or how to tackle a community issue. But once we start kind of implementing that more, I think we're going to see more of a rise of young people who already are super passionate about solving these issues and then kind of moving that and shifting that towards actually creating these solutions to solving them. So that's what I would kind of describe youth entrepreneurship as, especially seeing it from a various couple of different ways within my own life. I'll quickly touch on that, but not only from, you know, running 2V, I'm also involved in, I started my own entrepreneurship club at my school, then I was involved with Delaware Entrepreneurship League, which is just kind of this coalition of sorts of entrepreneurial clubs here within Delaware. And that was really interesting. And now I recently just got more involved / joined the board of an international nonprofit focused on entrepreneurship called the Diamond Challenge, and that's been really incredible as well. So I've definitely been able to kind of see this rise of youth entrepreneurship in all these different avenues.
And I think it's really good that you're branching out into more things other than the one where, you know, people have ideas, but it's so hard to implement these things. And I think, you know, the different things you get involved in really tell what you're going to do in the future. And so I know you talked about your book earlier. So do you think you get more into that, you know, the process of writing that and what it's about?
Yeah. So before I get started into the actual publishing and writing process, I want to just give everyone a little bit of background in terms of why I want to write this. The book project actually started in my freshman year of high school, and I joined this local program near me called the Dual School. And you go into this program, and this is also going back to your previous about entrepreneurship. This was a really amazing program to kind of catalyze youth to getting more involved in kind of this passion project entrepreneurial space. But I applied to this program with you know, a problem that I want to solve, and for me at the time, it was cultural identity. Growing up as an Asian American female, I, you know, dealt with my also fair share of not really knowing where to fit in, and you know, on one hand, wanting to fit in with, you know, my culture at home, but also having all these kind of stereotypes being thrown against me, and just lots of different issues that kind of arose. So it was an issue that I had grown up dealing with and felt like I was dealing with alone. So when I joined this program initially, I did not have the intention of writing a book around it. It was just me wanting to learn more about it. So I started talking with other youth and schools and students about how they were dealing with the issue, how schools were going about kind of teaching these problems to students. And I, especially after talking to some like elementary school and middle school teachers, they were pretty much saying that students were not really being taught about any of these issues at school. And yeah, it was just not something being covered. And I also learned that books were kind of a great avenue to try to spread a message to students. Um, and even still before starting the book, I was like, I am only a freshman in high school. There's no way I can do this. Like, it was crazy to me, the idea of being in high school and writing a book. But the person that ran the dual school program, he was like, you should just go for it. And I was like, okay, I'm part of this program, I'm gonna do it. So I started doing more research, and just via all the different things I learned from other people that I talked to about this problem, kind of compiled everything. And the book's mission is to, and kind of the reason why I wrote it is to teach students about the problems of implicit bias and stereotyping, And so I started on this maybe 1.5 year journey of first writing it. I had an amazing mentor here within Delaware that was previously like a children's book author, so he was familiar and kind of guided me through some of the process. Then I worked with my best friend to co-illustrate the book. In terms of actually publishing it, that was where I kind of ran into a crossroad where on one hand I wanted to go down this traditional publishing of maybe being published by Scholastic or some other publishing company, and after sending out 30-40 different inquiries to various agents, what I really learned the hard way was that sometimes it's not about what your book's about, even if it can be the most incredible book ever. Publishing agents are very particular about what they're looking for. So after kind of dealing with that initial rejection, I was like, do I still want to proceed? If I'm not going to go down this traditional publishing route, is there still a purpose in me getting this book out there? And I went back to the roots of why I wanted to spread this. I knew that was something that I didn't want to be hidden, underneath just because I couldn't get this book published the traditional way. So I started looking into self-publishing, and that's the avenue that I ended up going down. So that was harder because you don't have someone kind of guiding you every step of the way and showing you how publishing works. You kind of have to figure out everything on your own. It was also very rewarding, and after kind of that 1.5 years, I was able to publish it. It's called Finding Tiger, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that, but it's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Kindle and all of the traditional platforms. And after publishing it, I did kind of a mini book tour, going to different schools here within Delaware, speaking at some different conferences, and doing these workshops that took the book and kind of elevated it to the next level in order to teach students about these really important issues.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. Sorry. All right.
That's fine.
Yeah, I think there's like a storm going on here, so we're all good now. Do you think you could just tell us a little bit more about I know you talked about this a little bit with your book, but what was the transition from not being able to sign with the publishers and then moving forward in that process? What was your mindset going into that, and how did you really say, okay, I don't have this opportunity, but this is another way I can make an impact with this book?
Yeah. So obviously initially when you first kind of get a lot of those rejections, and it's in a very physical way, it's not even it's literally them saying, we're not going to, or not on board with like publishing this book. It can be really just, yeah, to say not better terms, which is not a great process, and you become really discouraged. But I think I definitely also learned a lot through that. And like I was saying, with any project, it's never going to be a completely kind of straight road to solving whatever issue or creating whatever thing that you kind of want to create. So I was pivoting from that, and then going on this process of then self-publishing, and I think that ended up being a really rewarding process. So it also goes to show that sometimes the end result's not going to be exactly what you think it's going to be originally, but it can sometimes turn out better, and you can still go ahead and go ahead and kind of implement your original mission, even if it's not in the first way that you thought was possible. So just overall really great learning experience, I think, but of course there's a lot of ups and downs in terms of emotion throughout it.
Yeah, for sure. And what did you end up doing when you published your book? Did you talk to elementary school students? Did you go to middle school students? Or how did you spread awareness after physically publishing it?
Yeah. So it was kind of a combination of all of that. So I ended up going to elementary schools and middle schools, and not only reading the book to them and doing a book tour in that sense, but since the original mission of my book and the reason why I wanted to create it was to teach students about the problems of implicit bias and stereotyping, I created this approximately 1 hour workshop that went alongside the book. So after we read it, we did all these different activities in order to kind of help especially younger students better understand a lot of these different problems. And additional to that, I also went on a bit of a I went to a couple different conferences, especially more of like school counselor conferences and that kind of thing, to kind of show this book to teachers and tell them, you know, why it's important to be teaching these issues at a really young age, and kind of how stereotypes really form at a young age and how they develop over time. So why this was really important to start implementing at schools.
Yeah, and that's a really amazing way to show that, like, no matter what you do when you do it, there's always a way to make an impact with something. I think you really show that through your process of, okay, you may be rejected once, but that isn't the end of something. That definitely, I think, is a sign that you're just the beginning, and there are so many other ways you can make an impact. I think that's really great. I wanted to transition a little bit back to the Urban Garden Initiative. Can you talk about the specific workshops you do and the different types of activities you do with students, and how that has translated to an impact in different communities?
Yeah, we do quite a wide variety, especially now from when we first started, of different types of workshops and programming. Like I said in our last one, I'm not sure if the people tuning on now kind of heard about that, but when we first started, it was pretty much just us creating this base program of a fall workshop and a spring workshop, where we would, part of it be teaching about gardening and how to grow food sustainably, and part of it be showing, you know, students about and kind of telling them and via different platforms of, you know, these other environmental issues that they should care about, and how they kind of all are tied together. So originally it was, you know, centered around climate change and food sustainability. From there, we began to develop more curriculum around pollution and recycling and just sustainability in general and saving species. And we have a lot of different curriculum that we're currently working on. And although a lot of our programs kind of got halted because of COVID, we've been able to kind of shift from that and do virtual programming. Um, and we're also currently doing a couple other types of workshops and programs. Just to let kind of everyone know, we have a public webinar that we're doing next weekend, August 1st at 6 p.m. And that's going to be a panel discussion of youth-led environmental organizations. We're doing like a 5-week virtual program with some other nonprofits as well. Each week's going to be like a different environmental topic. So we're kind of just, you know, continuing to experiment within this kind of virtual world and trying to broaden the types of environmental content and programming that we provide. So yeah, that's kind of
Yeah, that's great. And I think especially in this youth generation, and as I'm in school and as I'm talking to my peers as well, climate change seems to be an issue that a lot of people are really passionate about. But I know, especially because schools aren't teaching so much about entrepreneurship and how to start your own business, there's not always a clear path on, okay, I really like climate change, I want to make a difference, but I don't know how to make a difference. So for youth like us out there who may not know exactly how to make a difference or how to take the first step to making a difference, what would be your advice?
yeah. I think that was kind of one of the main things that made us want to start this organization in the first place, which is the idea that I think a lot of people, like you said, are very passionate about it, but have this kind of notion that unless I'm taking these groundbreaking steps to change the world and actually solve climate change, then there's nothing I can do about it. And what we want to show via all the workshops that we run is that even if you're young, even if you don't really know that much about these environmental issues, there's little things that you can start implementing in your everyday life that slowly over time will make a really great difference, especially if you continue to spread awareness about it and share it with your friends and family. So just to name a couple, if you want to start taking those positive steps towards helping the environment, you know, starting to kind of assess your plastic usage is definitely one. You know, whether, you know, we all kind of hear a lot about the kind of plastic straws, starting to change to use reusable straws, going out to the grocery store and using reusable bags instead of plastic bags, all of that kind of thing. Right now it's actually Plastic Free July, so it's the perfect time to kind of get started with that. And there's so many other little things that you can be implementing in your everyday life, and just start being more cognizant of reducing your waste in general, kind of starting your own compost, taking vegetable scraps from your normal trash and kind of, you know, putting them in a different bin and using them in your garden, starting a garden, of course. Those are all little steps that you can start implementing, and I think they make a really great difference over time if you want to take larger steps towards helping these problems, joining with your community, doing a cleanup, getting involved in other community organizations, working to solve these issues, seeing where they need most help. There's organizations like TUGI or doing similar or work on different environmental work all around the world. So I'm sure you can find one in your community. And if not, then start one. And yeah, just get involved with other youth that are passionate about it or other community members. And all of these things overall can help us to start mitigating the effects of climate change.
Yeah, I think it's so important to always emphasize that no one goes to solving such a large problem overnight, and that every little step, it may seem insignificant in the moment, but I think your organization is such a great example of starting something small and now being international, now really having the ability to show people that we've made an impact around the world. And that's really amazing. We're going to go to a few questions if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So someone asked, what is your, how do you mitigate ocean pollution around the globe?
Yeah, so I think that's an amazing question. Again, like I was saying, our organization is more centered around gardening and some other environmental topics. I would say we're not like an expert within, ocean pollution and that. So I can kind of give a little bit of advice to it, but I want to say I'm not like an expert. I don't want to say anything that's, wrong or kind of misleading, but definitely plastic pollution is a major problem within the ocean as well. And there's so many beach cleanups even happening right now that you can start kind of helping with some of these issues, just reducing your plastic in general and ensuring that it does not go into the ocean. Is also another great step towards kind of solving that issue. There's some other great organizations, just to name a few. One of the organizations we partner with called Think Ocean, they kind of focus on more of these problems. So I would say go check out some of these other incredible organizations that focus more on ocean conservation and that kind of thing, to find, more ways that you can help.
Yeah, for sure. And another question we had was, what are other materials that we should use besides microplastics for the clothes that we wear?
Again, I would say there's, I don't want to keep saying that I'm like deferring these questions because, but again, there's some other like incredible, like sustainable fashion brands that I want, people to kind of look more into. But I would say a couple ways to kind of get involved with the sustainable fashion industry. If you don't want to be spending a lot of money and, kind of supporting, even though they're incredible organizations that are kind of helping with, the sustainable fashion industry and creating clothes really sustainably, they can be very expensive sometimes. So thrifting is a great way to kind of reduce kind of the fast fashion and things like that. And if you want to look into other sustainable fashion brands, there's kind of a range of different prices. So that's kind of what I would say on that.
Yeah, and I know you talked about this a little bit on your takeover last night, but I think it's really important for everyone to be able to hear your amazing answer to this question. What's your advice for high school students who want to start a nonprofit?
I would say the first piece of advice that I would give is, definitely do your research. Starting a nonprofit or business to tackle a problem that you're passionate about is incredible, but sometimes, the work that needs to be done is not just starting a new nonprofit or starting a new business. It might be supporting some local nonprofits or businesses or national or global organizations that need more support in tackling these problems. So first assess if the organization that you want to create is already something that's, seen in some kind of community, already seen within your own community, and try to get involved there. If it is not and you want to continue to pursue the nonprofit route, I would say definitely go for it, but definitely talk to people that are in your community and see if people can help out. It's a kind of team effort when it comes to starting any type of organization. And then from there, it's, many different paths. Starting a nonprofit also does not mean that you have to register as a 501c3. You can start an organization without going about that first. Lots of different ways, and happy to go more into that. People are interested in hearing more about that, but that's where I would say to kind of start.
Yeah, no, that's great. There's, I think, there's not as much information out there right now as I think that there needs to be on how to actually go about starting something. I think there are so many people that are like, I started a nonprofit, I really want to start one. but the steps on how to do that are so unclear sometimes. And I think what you said is so true, that you have to have a community around you to be able to do it. It's definitely not something that you can do on your own and you can take on your own. So how did you really find those people in your community or those members that you're working with now that share that similar passion and drive as you do?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, but it's definitely difficult. I would say that when we first started, it might just start with, some friends that are interested, honestly, in what you're passionate about. And as you grow your organization, you will find people within the kind of topic / community that you're working in that are also passionate about what you're working towards and want to get involved. And although it can be somewhat slow process, I think it's so important to find the right people. And sometimes also when you do start having and forming a larger team, really assessing if people have enough time commitment and enough passion for what you're working towards, because you'll find with anything that you're working on, there's going to be some people that are interested in, but might not have, the time to be willing to spend towards actually helping you achieve those goals. So constantly kind of reassessing that as well is really important. To throw out another opportunity to everybody that's kind of listening, we actually recently opened our TEDxYouth Executive Board application. So we are also in the process of kind of adding on some new team members to our team as well. So if any of you guys that are listening are interested in joining, and after listening to me talk a little bit more about TED, getting kind of more involved, we do have that open, and that's going to be open until July 31st. So check out our Instagram for more information of how to kind of sign up and get involved with that.
Yeah, and that's actually all the time we have for today. But thank you so much, Megan, for joining us. I think it's so important to be able to show people that youth entrepreneurship is something that is accessible and something that's an option for so many people that have a passion for something and want to find a way to make an impact. So I think you're a huge inspiration for all of us. We really love the work your organization's done. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, absolutely love doing this, and hope that some of what I said and answering kind of some of your questions was helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.